am going to be doing the scout class today. Basically, I'm just going to go through, I'm going to start general. So, scout as a class, as a character, which a lot of you probably are already relatively familiar with. Maybe not necessarily in a sixes setting. But after that, I'll be getting into the basics of each role, being combo and flank, and what your duties are, what you're looking for, team play stuff, and going from there. So I have my game launched here, and for the purposes of this review, I will be loading into process, and I have a few dummies that I have through one of my configs that I'll be using to represent both your team, as in like the teammates around you, and the enemy team. So most of what I'll be covering is just like looking for and how to recognize advantages, But yeah, again, we're just starting with Scout as a character. So let me load up some config stuff real quick.
Play ball.
Okay, so I suppose we can just get right into it. So, Scout as a class, obviously, he's a very light class. He has the lowest HP in the game at 125, tied with, I think, 3 other classes off the top of my head. Along with that, he has a scattergun, very similar to a shotgun, except the difference between a scattergun and a shotgun is mostly the damage ramp up with your scattergun. So a shotgun at max damage, I have a buddy here, will do 90, whereas if you get right up in a scout's face, it can do up to 105, but it does more damage, basically. So that's basically what makes the scattergun its own thing and unique. Other than that, there's Scout's pistol, very similar to Engineer's pistol. You're mostly using this for chip. And a very common piece of advice that I give a lot of scouts is instead of using your very important scattergun shots at long range doing 10 damage, you can use your pistol at far range. And even with just one clip, I do like over double the damage of a scattergun, right? Plus, pistol ammo is much less like important, right? So this applies to both the pistol and the only other unbanned unlock for Scout being the Winger. So I'll talk about unlocks in a second. But then you have Scout's melees. Now, usually, most Scouts use the Boston Basher, right? But when we get into like Flank Scout, a lot of your deal is like you're able to run the ball. In fact, it's even evolved to a point nowadays where a lot of scouts can run Rap Assassin even as a pocket scout. I could even say that on Koth, I am when I'm playing Pocket Scout, I am more than okay with running Rap Assassin as a Pocket Scout, right? So that's like the basic rundown of like Scout's primary, secondary, melee. And the Boss Master is just used for building Ubers. A very small tip for like building Ubers, keep like around 150 health while you're building. This is to I have wrap both. This is to basically keep at least some overheal, like while you're building, right? Um, just something to keep in mind, because a lot of scouts will just build themselves to death. You know, they'll keep smacking themselves. And, you know, a fight starts and you're unhealthy and you have to like, oh shoot, you know, I need to get a buff, right? It's it's a careful balance. And also, as long as you're bleeding with the Boston Basher, you'll still build the Uber. So keep that in mind. I'm playing Flank Scout this upcoming season, so I'm just on the Rap Assassin. Unless it gets banned, that's a whole nother question. I have a few notes here, a few bullet points. Scout movement is pretty unique. Let me fly back to spawn to switch to winger. So as I mentioned, the winger is the only other unbanned scout unlock, and it's very powerful. There's a lot of like unique jumps across every sixes map that can only do with the winger. This one, for instance, you can jump off this rail with the winger and get on top of crates. You can use this during a mid fight. Obviously, you can't do this normally. It's a similar thing, but on like the side of the crate where you jump up, right? You have a lot of like control over a lot of space when you have the winger, right? Even jumps that you don't necessarily need winger for, like you don't need the winger to get on top of this rock. It just makes it like easier and it flows better, right? Um, so there's that. Other general movement tips, like your grounded movement is very important on Scout. A very basic like DM tip is you want to stay grounded versus hit scan, so other scouts, but you want to jump a lot versus projectiles. The reason being is like obviously projectiles are looking to shoot your feet. So if I'm fighting a soldier in a close area, um, I would look to, I mean, you can even abuse winger, right? I would look to jump as much as possible and like play this mid-range area. So obviously, um, this means that Scout is particularly good against like Soldier, right? There's a hidden rock paper scissors mechanic in sixes between Demo Soldier Scout, and one of the pieces of the rock paper scissors is that Scout is actually pretty good against Soldier. A lot of people argue that Scout is at his like best like versus Soldier, or like it's the most lopsided matchup is the way I should put it. You have a lot of say on what the enemy soldiers can and cannot do as a scout. And this leads into Combo Scout, which I'll get into in a moment. I think I have one more. Oh no, that's like most of it. The last like general scout tip that I will give is play a medium range, right? A medium range meaning like 40 to 60 damage, right? You can pretty consistently hit it. I think I have random bullet spread on because I didn't join a competitive server, but it's it's very important that you're able to keep your distance, especially versus projectile classes, right? To make their lives harder. And also and also to keep vision over like things around you, right? So you're fighting a guy. If you're next to them, you tunnel vision a lot harder when you're right next to him as opposed to like being further away, right? Um, Obviously the space next to IT isn't necessarily like the best example of this, but like um it's like a better example is like along the crates, right? Like you don't want to drop down the crates and like play to 100 damage the soldier, right? You want to play your medium range and have a much more consistent fight overall. Um, sorry about that. So you're you want to like keep high ground, right? This is very core to scout, and avoid like ruining positioning and your vision to like potentially to click somebody, you know? Um, and that leads me into high ground. High ground is really good. It lets you see a lot. It lets you rotate really fast between locations, right? Um, and you get to play a very one-sided cover, right? Because this is like a corner that you can control much easier than this player can on the opposing side, you know? Um, so with all this being said, you're this leads into combo. Sorry. So with all this being said, that's like the basic rundown. Um, leading into combo scout, your role is you're like usually the center of the team, right? You're usually the main caller. Um, you're usually the one like that's looking for advantages and seeing when you're at a disadvantage. Um, and most of all, which most of you know Combo Scout for, you're the guy protecting the medic, right? So, what does this mean? How do you protect your medic? You protect your medic by looking for what is dangerous to your medic, right? So, if many of you have played medic in a pub, um, the scariest things are like random flankers, like snipers, like random spies, explosives, right? Explosives being the soldiers in the demo, right? And this kind of leads into the pocket scout mentality where you're looking for all of these things a lot of the time and you're weighing whether you're like weighing how likely one scary thing is going to happen as opposed to another, right? So let's say you enter a mid fight. What's the scariest things for your medic? 99% of the time, it's the soldiers, right? Um, these guys, the soldiers, are your medic's like number one problem most of the time, besides like maybe sticky traps. Um, a lot of Pocket Scout, at least when you kind of start getting into the nitty gritty of it, is how can I pressure their soldiers enough to where they don't get a free bomb onto my medic, right? Um, so you think to yourself, okay, where are they, right? This is a constant throughout every encounter that you have in a game of sixes, right? Where are the enemy soldiers are usually the highest priority. Where are the sticky traps is like the second highest priority. Is there an off class? Question mark. Usually you can tell this based off of somebody being dead, right? So if somebody's dead, this is top bar theory, right? You can see at the top of your screen the soldier's dead. If he's dead, then that's one less thing you have to worry about, right? As a combo scout. And as a team in general, but usually on Combo Scout, you're the one paying attention to that the most. So, X player is dead. Sometimes you'll get into scenarios, and this leads into worrying about off classes. You kill a scout, and scouts are usually the guys off classing, right? This isn't always the case. And I'll talk about off classes more when I get to flank scout, since it mostly pertains to them. But if you kill a scout, there is a decent probability, like let's say you killed a scout on mid, that when they spawn and you start entering second, there could be an off class, right? And on process, specifically, this usually, I don't have a bind for a sniper, so I'm just going to use another scout for this. This usually means, a sniper 2, sometimes lower lobby here, right? And these are just things that you have to look for when you're playing Combo Scout, right? And, other teammates can help with this too, but it weighs on you the most, right? Since you are the guy closest to your medic most of the time, And along with that too, like traps are sort of like the in-between of that, where you kind of get used to a lot of common trap spots. Like, these sheer corners are a big example of this, where like traps are common. This sort of leads me into my next point about Combo Scout, and that's understanding Ubers. And with Ubers, that comes with door theory, right? And what do I mean by door theory? So in TF2, each like connecting location between a point is a door, right? Obviously, but they're not all doors are made the same, right? Some doors are more congested, and some doors are more open. Some doors are a shutter door, and these are a unique case, right? And what does all of this mean? Well, this pertains to both protecting your medic and pertaining to Ubers, right? So when it comes to protecting your medic, if there's a shutter, right? So let's say the more common case on this map is pushing out of 1, right? Or even pushing into 1 on process here. Shutter doors are quite dangerous, really. You can't see anything, obviously, right? You have to be quite close to open the shutter door and see what is past, right? This means, again, traps. You open the door, there's sticks on the floor. You and whoever dies. Off classes, sniper can hide. Or be prepared to shoot someone that opens the door. And anything in between, there can be a soldier on the other side waiting to nuke you and your combo as you walk through the door. There are close, sheer corner, congested doors where it emphasizes getting through much more heavily, right? As opposed to shutters where you have to clear it more methodically. So these doors you need to get through and get in and take space as fast as possible, right? Whether this is on you directly as a combo scout or, usually one of your soldiers is a more common person of that, but you need to be right behind your soldier when they do that or if. And that's just what these kind of doors emphasize. And lastly, there's the more open, like somewhat safe door, where these doors are often more open. You see how upper IT is a little different than lower IT, right? Upper IT, the reward for getting through the door is high ground, right? So this door is more congested. But getting through lower IT, you're on low ground, right? And you're directly below upper IT, which is scary. So this door is slightly more open. This lets you see a lot more. So, you're coming up. Usually you can get away with like looking up to see stickies or looking around and running through. To be fair, lower IT is a pretty uncommon trapdoor. If there are any Demo Man players in the VC that can take advantage of that and make me eat my words, that'd be pretty funny. But and again, with like choke, right? This is like a somewhat safe, like open doorway. The biggest difference between this choke specifically, though, is there's a high wall next to it. So a lot of soldiers will like to bomb really, really high, and sort of be like this and then land on your combo, right? So process choke is a little bit of a unique case of a big open doorway. So this is more or less what it's pertaining to, actually protecting your combo and your medic, right? But what about Ubers, right? A lot of Combo Scout is taking Ubers effectively, taking trades if possible, and I'll explain trades in a moment. And importantly, also understanding what the enemy wants to do with their Uber, right? So let's say you're in a scenario where you have Uber ad against the other team, right? Let's say you were holding second, their combo took an Uber that was really bad and they wiped, and now it's ad for you guys pushing into second, because usually by this timing, all of the enemy players will be spawned on second, right? So, number one always is either go spot for information yourself as Combo Scout, or ask your teammates to do this. This usually falls on one of your soldiers or your flank scout. And there are some doors that are better for spotting than others, right? If you're going to spot, choke is like pretty risky because there's a lot of trap spots, right, that can't easily be cleared. Plus, again, this high bomb I mentioned. Plus, there's a large ramp that like descends before you can actually like spot anything. You know what I mean? There's IT, which obviously is potentially the worst door to attempt to spot any information from when you're trying to push into process second, because you can't see anything, right? And then there's sewer, which is the safest door to garner information from, despite there being a shutter, right? But this is like probably a balancing thing. You can also notice that you can kind of jiggle the shutter to check for stickies. So this is something to keep you safe from any sticky traps that might be on the shutter. But once sticks are clear, you can have the door open and look, right? Observe. Where are their players? Are they planning to leave? Are they close? Do they not know it's Uber ad for your team, right? Which can happen. And are they playing close or in a catchable position for your Uber? All of this is relative information that lets you pick what door you want to take your Uber, right? So let's say the enemy team is super duper passive. None of their players are caught with the Uber under any circumstance in a million billion years, and you yourself as the combo scout spot this. What is the proper door to take? Well, usually it's the most passive, most safe door. In this case, would be Al Qaeda, right? Al Qaeda is usually the safest door. The biggest hazard to Al Qaeda are stickies and a sniper. I wouldn't even say soldier bombs are particularly like insanely threatening coming from Al Qaeda when you have Uber ad, because the space is so wide open and you have so much time to see if a soldier is bombing that you can just backpedal away. Your medic can backpedal into sewer again if he needs to, you know. Uh, and you can just milk the Uber, right? Now, on the opposite end, if they're playing on point and they look very caught with the Uber, what would be a good door to take then? Well, you can launch it choke with your demo, right? You can call I want to launch choke with my demo. You know, you can call a scout demo Uber, and you can specifically say to launch your demo. And, you know, your demo puts however many sticky bombs he feels like. I've seen Logan put a many 8 sticky, like, ultra, like, space launch trap to get Ubered into the enemy backline as fast as possible and make the enemy team caught, right? Another popular door to take an Uber ad where the enemy team seems caught is IT. And it was a little hinted at before where I was saying you want to spot into second. Well, IT is the worst for that. Well, it kind of works vice versa. If you are being sneaky about it, IT, for the most part, is relatively hard to spot into from the defending side, right? Especially if they're down players. So you can use this to your advantage and run through, you know, and take your Uber that way. So to simplify, on every map, on every point, there's the passive milk doors. So on process mid to second, it's sewer, right? Sewer is like the passive door that you don't want to use through ever, ever, ever. Choke is kind of a hybrid where you can use through if you want, or you can milk through if you want. The trade-off is that it's easier to spam, right? So this is sort of a hybrid door where you can do either if possible. And then you have your aggro doors. I want to use them and I want to kill them now, right? Whether that is accomplished or not, you know, it depends. Depends on how good the spot is, how good the information you gathered was, and how good your DM is. And, you know, there's all kinds of similar doors to all of these, right? You know, thinking of aggro doors in just this cup alone, you know, the other 5 CP map is Snakewater. From second to mid, there's Kitchen, right? That's a very aggro door where you're right in the enemy's face off rip, where you usually want to use Uber. And then, you know, a passive door on Snakewater being like mid to second, lower, right? That huge like lower area with the big yard. You have a lot of information that you can gather. So yeah, like get your info. Decide whether you want to milk the Uber or not use it, or rip the Uber. We are using it and we are going to kill them, right? And yeah, that's more or less it. A lot of it comes from just understanding your doorways, right? So, along with Uber ad, we have Uber trades, right? So, usually, Uber trades are taken when your team is down players. So, let's say. Let's say, you know, let's say instead of, you know, 2 scouts, 2 soldiers, demo, medic, you only have you and and your demo and a soldier and a medic. So let's say in this scenario, your team double sacked, right? So your whole flank is dead. What do you want to do, right? You have a few options. You can Uber trade. So this basically consists of I want to hold the space that we have on this side of the point and abuse the fact that the other team has to walk through a tiny doorway, right? And usually when doing this, you want to pay attention to your spawn timers. You can see them with your top bar, right? When your teammates are dead, it's a little hard for me to show it here because during the tournament ready up mode, it's an instant spawn. But there will be a countdown timer for your spawners, right? If you're paying close enough attention to that, I would say roughly if you have 4 seconds or less on your spawners, you can take a very aggro trade that's basically meant to stuff the enemy team in a choke point and keep them there, right? And force their Uber and make their push invalid. The heck? Why is Scout's thing turning blue? That's so weird. I've never noticed that before. Huh. But yeah, like usually how you want to accomplish this is you need a player that can spot many doors, right? So let's say in this case you have a soldier alive, right, with your flank sacked angle. You need a player to spot everything, right? He can hear IT, he can see choke, and from this map is like if you're spotting choke, you can see if the enemy team crossed the sewer, right? Because you can see it. And you, as the combo scout with your medic, want to hide. You want to be as unseen as possible so you can surprise the enemy team with your Uber trade. And you're basically trying to force the Uber and stall time, right? This is a very high risk and I would say high reward play. You get to keep the space that you have. You force out Ubers on both teams, and if you end up getting a kill, right? Let's say you pop in, you like two-shot their demo, right? Miraculous. You then have an advantage both going into second and you've completely like muted their advantage coming into your mid. Right? So needless to say, again, most important thing, be unseen. If like being like behind this rock and relying on your teammate to spot is the difference between my god, I don't even know my own binds. This is a tragedy. What the heck? Needless to say, the difference between being unknown, right, and taking the trade while in their face, right? Or like sitting on mid, seeing them and letting them walk up to like here, right? And then being like, okay, let's trade, run them, run. They'll just a lot of the time run away, right? That's the risky thing. This is the vice versa of like spotting while you're entering a point. If they're down players, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to play the point, right? Because if you don't see them or you're being lazy about your spotting, you can get Ubered on, and your Uber gets forced. Players can get dropped. It's a very scary scenario, right? So make sure to be aware at all times. Spot everything, right? Spot all players. And let me check my bullet points. With that being said, it's mostly like that's most of what to say about Ubers, right? That's like simple, The only other thing would be last push Ubers, where it's a similar checklist to what I mentioned with spotting for threats when you're trying to protect your medic. When you're going to Uber into the last point, you're spotting for demo, where his sticks are. Off classes, you're spotting where the sentry gun is. You're spotting potentially where soldiers are positioned if there's a sniper. I'd say going up and down the priority list for last push Ubers, you want to go from kill the gun to kill or pressure the demo to detonate his stickies to miscellaneous off classes to like soldiers kind of fall in between on like the priority scale of like killing and pressuring the demo and like miscellaneous off classes. The reason being is like a soldier's life is like this is gonna sound weird. A soldier's life is as important as they make it, right? On last, a soldier's job is to stop the point, right? But when you're playing scout, your job is to pressure the cap and, you know, potentially capture it. So you're looking for soldiers specifically to avoid them stopping you, right? Now, you don't have to stand on the cap the whole time, and especially do not die for the cap, right? That's the worst thing that can happen. But if the soldiers don't stop you, then they were never a problem. But if they're stopping you a lot, then you need to be more vigilant, you know, look for them, potentially spot them, you know, do damage to them before the Uber if possible. Not necessarily entirely on a scout, but that's more or less what needs to be said about last Ubers without going into great detail. I'll talk about, okay. Let's talk about discipline next. So, Combo Scout is arguably needing to be the most disciplined role in the game. If you overchase too much or opt to stay in a fight that is losing, it's like more or less on you, right? This is like discipline and learning to cut your losses, right? If a scenario is bad, then it's bad, right? Now, when you're learning, you'll find that you'll stay in a lot of fights that maybe could have been winnable, but you said to leave, or you'll stay in a lot of fights that you'll never win in a million years and your team will wipe, and you'll be thinking to yourself, how did my team wipe, right? You know, you'll ponder looking at the stars or whatever. A lot of it is understanding just what I've talked about so far. Looking at your top bar, you know, your friends, your enemies, right? Yeah, I'm just mashing my keyboard at this point. Just seeing your friends and enemies on the top. Knowing who's dead, right? Knowing who's alive on your team and who's alive on the other team. Reading any potential threats that might happen. So any potential off classes or any potential hiders, right? Reading space, right? If you're fighting mid and your mid looks like this within like 10 seconds within the mid starting, you know, you got these guys up here, like, you know, the other team is like pulling up like this, right? I think we should leave actually. And you know, you leave, you run, it's awesome, right? Running away is really awesome. Don't be afraid to run away. It really does save a lot of games because fighting a losing battle is like game losing all the time, right? And it's something you'll learn with time. But again, it's like cut your losses. Be disciplined, look for the soldiers, mostly the soldiers, right? On Combo Scout, you hate soldiers. You have soldiers with like you have like a picture of a soldier on your wall that you look at night with a bunch of darts in it. Um, you like hate soldiers. Um, look for yeah, I mean that's I feel like most of the Combo Scout basics. I will leave that at that for now. We'll have time for questions later. I'm not sure how long they really want me to run with this, but I will take this time to talk about Flank Scout now. Um, Flank Scout is my favorite role personally. Not that I hate Combo Scout. I find Combo Scout very interesting, but Flank Scout is hmm. Flank Scout is a different type of cerebral than Combo Scout is because Combo Scout is a very like expressed, loud type of thinking where you are verbally expressing the enemy team can have this, this, and this. But Flank Scout is a much more personal, like internalized type of cerebral where yeah, sometimes you'll have your buddy with you, your beloved roamer, right? But a lot of the time you're kind of on your own and it's up to you to make like a good decision, right? And the good decision is very vague and there's like a million different good decisions with varying degrees of success. You know what I mean? Um looking at my bullet points. The first thing I'll talk about are Flank Scout mids, and I distinguish this between Combo Scout, particularly because Flank Scout mids are your role is much more like you're not Combo Scout like Loki has it easy on mids, right? You play in a fashion on Combo Scout where you have total height control a majority of the time, and your job on Combo Scout is to deny soldiers and make sure anyone that aggresses on your combo doesn't kill them, right? And then once your team has a big advantage, you can chase down stuff on Combo Scout, right? On Flank Scout, it's a little different. You're not necessarily, it's not that you're not playing defensive ever. In fact, Scout in general has to be like more or less like second or third into the aggression because you're so squishy. But you're not looking for the easy. Well, okay. You are looking for the easy stuff, right? But finding that easy stuff is the hard part. So, what are the easy kills on a mid fight, right? So, a lot of the time, you'll pull up to mid and you'll see their soldiers instantly here like at the start of the mid, and your combo scouts here, your demos getting annihilated, like everyone's screaming for help. Oh, it's horrible, like, oh my god, But your main role isn't necessarily to kill these soldiers, right? It's contextual, and it depends on your team's dynamic and the mid plan and what's been happening during the scrim or match or whatever. But a lot of the time, at least when I'm playing Flank Scout, when I see both of their soldiers in the air, I'm running past them and I'm running across the point. This is to stop not these players from aggressing on your combo, but these other players that are honestly much scarier than a soldier, right? These two and then these two. Mostly this guy. Um, Demo on a mid fight when you're playing Flank Scout is unironically your biggest mark, right? And scouts are also a great thing to shoot at when you're playing mid. The reason being, and the reason I say scouts, is because when your soldiers are bombing, right? So most of the time, your prompt to walk forward on Flank Scout is when your soldiers are bombing, right? When they're doing, like, I can't necessarily place a soldier in the air. Oh my. Oh, like when your soldiers are in the air, this is your prompt to like walk forward, right? And most of the time, when your soldiers are landing on the ground, the enemy scouts will be turned, looking at them, right? And this is your golden opportunity to shoot them in the back, right? This is half of what you're looking for on flank scout on a mid. The other half is damage on their demo man, right? Or at least like pressure. Process is a little harder to accomplish that on, but you can find it in ways like hugging the right crate. You know, you can find tagged damage, and you don't need a lot of damage either. Just enough to like pressure him, right? To make him think twice about walking across the point on 150 health, right? A demo without a buff is like very scared a lot of the time, you know? Finding high ground to look for a chance to pressure the demo is also good. But generally, damage on most of the classes in the game is like profit, right? It's just the timing in which you choose to do that damage is the hardest part about like looking for it, right? If the demo man is back here, I don't even know my own bind. If the demo man's back there and he's been sitting back there the whole mid, look for a closer target, right? Now, if the demo man is looking at you, you can't necessarily play on the high ground, right? I mentioned the rock, paper, scissors at the start of this. Well, demo is Scout's biggest like hater, right? A lot of demos, sticky bombs in particular, can get great damage on a Scout because a sticky does like around like 40, right? If he hits it like close enough to you. And he can do this like by charging it up like more or less across the map and tagging you. It'll like strip your buff instantly. It'll like one sticky will like ruin your mid in a lot of ways because even watching my newbies during this cup, like they'll get tagged by a sticky and then like they like run away. Like they don't want anything to do with anything about mid anymore, right? Sticky bombs are scary. So yeah, like on flank scout, look for the counter aggression on the classes that are looking to follow up on the things that these two are doing, right? That is your role on mids, right? If you turn for these two guys, then you have like one, like probably two, maybe three people already looking at the soldiers, right? Adding on top of that makes the enemy team's aggression very easy, right? So be mindful. With that being said, let's talk about. So there's a vague concept that exists in video games in general called tempo, where I would say this applies to flank scout more than combo scout. Sorry, I would say this applies to flank scout more than combo scout more, because on combo, a lot of the time you're playing a more methodical game, spotting players, spotting for traps, spotting for off class, right? As I mentioned. On flank scout, you can take aggression much more into your hands, right? With an asterisk attached to it, right? Whenever you're looking to make a play, usually the enemy either needs to have explosives dead. So when an explosive is dead, right? So when one of these three people are dead, a door is usually open somewhere, right? So if a soldier's dead, maybe IT is open, maybe sewer's open, right? If the demo's dead, then most common doors really are open because there's no potential for sticky traps, right? So, as long as you're not being like hard met by a soldier, you can usually get through pretty clean. Um, and with this being said, when the enemy team is down players, you as a flank scout can take a lot more liberty in taking space aggressively for your team, clearing things for your team, and spotting things for your team, right? I like doing this a lot on flank scout. You have to be very careful about this. Dying on flank scout is, depending on the context, relatively sinful. Um, it's like when you're dead, your combo scout can then no longer take like any aggression, right? Or at least he has to be very careful about it, right? Because if both of the scouts are dead on your team, then you have no cleanup potential. Your medic has no movement. Like the whole team just gets their legs chopped off, basically. Um, so when you're taking aggression as a flank scout, you have to do it with a lot of caution and a lot of forethought, right? Why do I want to rush IT, right? Well, I want to rush IT because there is no soldier, right? They're down one soldier, they're down a scout, so they're down their flank. So there's probably no one on the flank door, so I'm going to take a risk here and rush a door, right? And, once you get to a certain point, you can like spot, is someone around? No, okay, I'm through. You can listen to your combos calls. If they are trying to get through choke, for instance, like let's say your soldier jumped through, he's getting hard met, your demo medic, and the enemy team is hard meeting your combo, right? Like something like this. It becomes on the flank to get through and get that space, right? This is where the idea of flank scout comes into play, right? You create opportunities through your team by creating chaos, right? Flanking. Now, does this necessarily mean you need to flank always, all the time, no matter what, 24/7, 365, right? No. Again, you are a very squishy class. If you're flanking constantly, teams will start to anticipate it a lot more, right? They'll start holding people on a flank door, waiting for you to run through and make yourself a kill, right? I run through, oh, there's a soldier here. Oh my god, right? And then you're dead. Teams will generally, as you move up the ladder, teams will be more disciplined about having their doors covered also, which makes flank plays much harder to achieve, right? It's never impossible, right? As I mentioned, when they're down players, down explosives in particular, a door is open, right? Even if it's covered by a scout, if you have your roamer with you, like you can potentially shove out the scout, right? This also leads into like down players on your team scenarios where when your team is down players, what do, right? Because when you're up players, it feels super easy to like, oh, I can just like run through, and if I die, oh, who cares? Like my team, we're still up a guy. It's okay. It's all chill. Like I was just limit testing, right? That's my favorite. That's my favorite thing to say is I was just limit testing. Well, when you're down players, it's a lot different, right? You become very responsible very fast when your team starts losing players, right? When you're on flank scout. You will be more responsible for watching a flank door because your roamer is dead, right? So it's on you. And you are also much more responsible for anticipating flank shoves, right? Um, this is a concept I'll talk about when it comes to on your end as the player in a second, but receiving flank shoves is an art, a skill, right? If your roamer is dead, right? Um, it's more often on this scenario. Usually when you're attacking mid, right, or like pushing out of last, for instance, flank shoves are very common, right? Some of the enemy gamers will be like, you know, we want to shove last. We're on their side of the map. We can afford to take risks, right? So this is why I mention pushing out of last and pushing out of mid, or pushing into mid in particular, right? Because these are situations where the enemy team were the aggressors, right? They have space to give in the game mode of 5CP, right? Um, they have space to give. They are willing to take more risks. So this is where flank shoves come into play. If your roamer is dead, you need to be very careful as a flank scout, right? You need to be as passive as possible, watching a doorway that is the most likely to receive a shove, right? And depending on where it comes from, the enemy flank can be as creative as they want. Usually, when pushing into mid, the shove comes from IT. Sometimes it can be sewer, but it's usually on your combo to clear sewer, so it's not really up to you. So when your combo is entering mid, don't just run in through IT by yourself. This is a sin, right? If you are alone, your flank partner is dead, even if you have your flank partner, you want to kind of use your soldier. I'm going to laugh when I say this. As bait. Your soldier has more health than you, right? This is a similar concept to Combo Scout, where, the pocket soldier jumps through to make space, right? You know what I mean? And your Combo Scout comes in second, right? This is the same thing on the flank. If you are further ahead from your roamer and they decide to, Five Nights at Freddy's, like, jump scare, right? Oh, not that guy. Not that guy either. They like Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare you, and you're the further guy forward. You don't have a overheal buff, right? Well, you're dead. I mean, most of the time you're dead. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, if it's flipped, when they aggress, your soldier takes the aggression first, and he has more health that he can take, right? Plus, if your roamer hits good damage, you can usually win the trade. But a lot of the time, you're trying to take these scenarios when you're buffed, and if you are entering IT, there's usually a greater purpose rather than to like just run through IT. You know what I mean? Usually, you're trying to get through a flank door when, as I mentioned before, your combo is being stuffed hard in choke, right? They can't get through. Your combo can't get through, so it then becomes on the flank to either get through a flank door to pressure and show presence and peel enemy combo players off of the door, right? Like out here, like you guys show presence, like the scout has to get off of the door, he has to get on high, he has to run away. Usually the guy stuffing the door is the demo. If you guys are showing presence IT, your roamer jumps through IT to to get on the demo, then this demo has to react, right? He has to turn around. This gives your combo a chance to, kill him. This door, your roamer, or I'm sorry, your pocket soldier usually has a decent time versus a demo, as he can jump above and behind the enemy demo if he's too far forward. But in a scenario where your combo needs help getting through a door, they're asking for the flank to pressure other doorways in order to create the necessary space to get through the door, right? With that being said, if you are alone, again, be very careful. You do not want to be by yourself in the middle of a flank door, right? Because if you get shoved, you're dead, right? I can't emphasize this enough. If it is even Ubers and you want to push a flank, one of two things need to happen. You need to either be overheal buff, so you need to be 185 health, or you need a roamer with you, right? In an even player scenario. If neither of those can be met, don't go into a flank door by yourself. Most of the time, right? I'll get into the scenarios where it's fine in a moment. But when you have a friend or you are healthy, you can take risks, right? And that's really the thing about flank, is you are more or less the risk takers. This is why you sometimes hear like, oh, if the flank dies, it's okay. Really, it's like not okay, because every death your team has makes it exponentially harder to hold a point or attack a point. But utilizing your life to make space or get a pick or make a play is like your duty, right? Here's why I get into niche scenarios. When the enemy team is down players, but your team is also down players, this is where death ball scenarios come in to play. Usually the other team won't just solo shove a player, or if they're down more than 2 players, they won't shove at all. These are scenarios where I usually take the time on Flank Scout to actually just deathball with my combo. Deathballing is just like being with your combo, right? You're stacking as many bodies on top of your combo as you can to make your chances of like getting forced or your chances of success really high, right? Usually this is done when you have Uber ad or like a player ad that's more than like 2, right? Because, well, okay. Most of the time, both of those criteria have to be met in order for you to be okay with deathballing. But most of the time, just having a player ad of more than 2 usually is like enough to deathball, right? Reason being is when the enemy team is down 2 players, usually most of the time that's their flank for 1, and for 2, a team is usually less willing to give up more than 2 players, right? Because once you get into like these 2 are dead, right? Giving up like, well, you're not going to give up your other scout, like that's silly. You're not going to give up your demo because that's silly. Your other soldier, like, maybe is inclined to like go for something, but it's usually not advised, because if he dies on like a bad timing, then you're just like trickling players and he's dead for a second while your roamer is just spawning, and it kind of just snowballs from there. So a lot of the time when the enemy team is down at least 2 more players than you, right? Again, that's the key. You have a player out of 2 or more. It's usually fine to just chill around your combo, because there's no threat of a flank shove. Now, to mention this, what counters a death ball? Flank shoves. You get around the death ball and you like torture them, right? Oh my goodness. If you see the enemy team like consistently have 6 players on top of each other all the time, the answer to it is shoving a flank, right? Because it then splits a lot of their players apart from each other and both makes it very uncomfortable for them. And I mean, obviously, if they're having to like run to a doorway to catch you guys shoving a door, then they're not prepared, right? A soldier has to spend health to like get to you. Um, a scout can maybe be just barely too slow or like just slow enough to not be prepared for it. Like a lot of things can happen when you have to like emergency go back to handle a flank shove. Um, so with that being said, consulting my bullet points again. We can talk about what to call. On Flank Scout, you are saying what you are doing a lot as the Flank Scout and what you see the other team doing. Scout, again, I mean, it's in the name. The class is called Scout. You are good at spotting for info, right? A lot of this consists of like double jumping around corners. This is a really good example for it. But you can double jump around corners really fast to see things quickly. Usually you do this to not get headshot by a sniper, but like juking traps could be a use for it too. I mostly use it for dealing with a sniper spot. But saying you're like, let's say you are entering or attempting to enter mid, or let's say your team wants to sack into second, right? I'll use this scenario instead. It becomes on you to explain what you want to do as like a flank, right? Sometimes you'll have a combo scout that is willing to call like flank plays for you, but it's good to be of your own mind, right? Because when it comes down to it, like your combo scout isn't always going to be able to call things for you. So you having, your own game sense, your own decision making, your own mind can make up the difference of that. You know what I mean? So let's say, standard hold on process, team holding second, even Ubers. Let's say you just need to be creative, right? I want to go Al Qaeda and sack from there, right? Maybe not the most safe thing ever, but if you're saying this, you can call your roamer to watch IT. Be like, okay, I'm getting into position. Enemy team sees you. Are we ready, team? 3, 2, 1. We're in. You're doing the sack, whatever. Alternatively, spotting for info. You see a scout lower IT. I see a scout lower IT, right? I don't know where their roamer is. Your roamer can say where their roamer is, which, in an even Uber scenario can usually be upper IT, right? You say thanks to your roamer, pat him on the back, whatever. A lot of things I like to call on Flank Scout too is just where I am in terms of my presence. If my roamer is in IT, let's say he's like wanting to make a play IT and he starts waddling over, I'll usually say something like, okay, I'm with you, my roamer. Or I'm coming with you then, or do you need me? Or just ask questions with your flank partner, right? Sometimes you can even ask your combo like, hey, what did we see? You can even like help your combo scout in terms of like spotting for off classes or other things to look out for, like, hey, this guy died, maybe he's on sniper or spy or whatever other off class. Hey, like, they're 3 down, spot 3 players or look for soldier, being that like secondary voice and like helping your team like have control over the game state can make a big difference, right? Other than that, a lot of the time you don't need to be super loud. I'd say like flank scout is pretty low on the priority list of like needs to call, right? But there are things you definitely need to say, but there are also definitely times where you don't need to say anything definite, right? Comms can get very cluttered very fast if everybody is speaking all at once trying to give ideas. So a lot of it depends on your team dynamic. Like I've been on like most of the teams I've played flank scout on, it's definitely I mean, at least from my perspective, it seemed appreciated that I would chime in and be like, hey, they could have this, this, and this, or watch for soldiers, or spot 3 players. That's a lot of what I did on flank scout for the teams I played for. But other than that, like, just focus on I am at this location. I want to sack, or I want to sack in this way, or asking your soldiers questions too, like both of them, right? Because on flank scout, you're in more of a position to follow up on both of your soldiers, right? More particularly your roamer, but because you can be much more quote unquote free, right? You can follow up on your pocket soldiers' aggression as well. So asking them questions, what they want to do, listening to them also. But yeah, let's see. I think the last thing I'll talk about when it comes to flank scout is the idea of risk versus reward. I already mentioned, but when you die, this restrains your pocket scout even more than he's already restrained. So dying as little as possible is the goal, but obviously it's very easy to never die if you just sit and spawn the whole game and do nothing, and then you can be like, well, I didn't die at all. Why? I don't know why we lost, really. And finding that balance of aggression versus like not dying is really the hardest part about flank scout. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot to talk about off classes. Flank scout is the most prone to off class, right? This can consist of playing sniper in like a forward spawn, be very cheeky about it, right? Playing sniper while attacking into the last, playing spy. On the defense, you're the most prone to play off classes. Just you're more or less like the off class guy on flank scout, right? When it comes to off classing, when you are defending last, engineer is the highest priority off class, and depending on the last and the team dynamic, it kind of goes down from there. But there are team dynamics where the combo scout prefers to play NG, and there are also team dynamics where they prefer the flank scout to play NG. I've played on a lot of teams when I'm on flank scout to where the flank scout is usually preferred to play NG, so I'll talk about flank scout here as if you are the engineer player, but just know that it's team dependent, and the pocket scout can play NG just as much as flank scout can. With that being said, you're like, when you're defending last, you're looking for the timing to put up a sentry gun as much as possible, right? If it's even Ubers, you need to look for that timing, right? Because the sentry gun is the best defense in the game, right? It's your like aimbot auto aim friend, right? That does everything that no other player on the team can do because everyone has chud mechanics, right? When it comes to finding that timing, a lot of the time it's either looking at the bottom of your screen. I don't know. I'm assuming you can see my cursor. Looking at the bottom of your screen and seeing the capture rate on each control point. Usually, if they're about like a fourth to a halfway through capturing second, then you probably should play heavy for the time being instead. Heavy is also great at defending last, but he's kind of a diet sentry gun, right? He's not the auto aimbot. I mean, unless you're cheating, I don't know. I don't know any of you. But heavy is good. More or less, he's faster than NG, right? This is the thing you probably heard before. You pick NG if you have time to build a gun, and this is, both defending last even Ubers and defending last disad, right? If you have time to build a gun, then do it all the time, always, right? If you do not have time, usually heavy is like the second better option, right? When it comes to defending last even Ubers, if you happen to not be on engineer, then your other off-class options are usually sniper, sometimes pyro. It depends on the last. You need to swap. Usually scored shot, right? I mean, you get the point. But yeah, like, I lost my train of thought. Pyro and sniper are usually the better, like, second off class, right? Usually both of the scouts can off class, right? So if your medic has Uber, you don't necessarily need a scout. There are scenarios where like you want to push out a last fast for whatever reason, right? And having your pocket scout on scout can enable that to happen faster, so your team doesn't have to switch off a scout and such. But again, like the best pairings with an NG are NG Sniper and NG Pyro, right? Heavy is a little redundant. Usually you have Engineer Heavy as an off-class setup when it's disad on last. And if you are going to run this setup, have your sentry gun and have your heavy on opposite sides of the point, right? That way, if the enemy combo Ubers into your last, and again, this is a disad scenario, if the enemy combo Ubers into your last, they don't get to take everything at once, right? It's a very gambly thing. If you put all of your resources on one side, and even then that gets countered by spotting, right? So be wary of that. Again, with even Ubers, NG Sniper, particularly on process, is quite strong. The sniper can sit next to spawn and see everything. Sniper is really good. I mean, what do I even say? Like you have your sentry gun up, and anytime the other team tries to take down your sentry gun on sniper, you headshot them, and then they like throw their hands in the air and then pick sniper themselves, and then the game lasts for a million years. You know, that's a whole nother thing in and of itself. But usually on even Ubers, you want an NG sniper. There are particular scenarios where, let's say Goalie Wash, for instance, where NG Pyro is actually particularly strong on that map. But again, it's map dependent. On process, usually NG Sniper is better. And yeah, that's mostly it. I think I'm pretty safe to open up to questions now. I think I don't know if I want to throw Egan back up here or if I haven't like. Oh wait, I can see requests. Wait, I'm DMing. Wanna come back up here? Question mark. That way you can drag people. And he can hear me talking about this too, is the best part. Okay. Oh. Okay, so yeah, there is a classroom chat. So either if you have a question, put it in classroom chat, or you can raise your hand. Oh, there's a chat in here too. What do I do when an invite level scout just runs at me? From Unsweet Max. Okay, so in terms of DM, I guess I can talk about DM real quick. DM is obviously an acquired skill. I usually stress like learning the game and learning advantages and disadvantages and reviewing because DM kind of comes with time. When you're playing a player that's like better than you, a lot of the time they show they're better than you by having better like game knowledge and better positioning. And, that leads into the meme of like better positioning, better aim, better, DM. Uh, but it's like an invite level scout has like all of the. It's like when you get to around like a certain point, I mean, yes, there's a deathmatch skill difference between like one scout to another, but generally a lot of the baseline mechanics are met, right? A lot of scouts, at an invite level will have like fine enough AC, right? They can hit they can hit their shots like most of the time when it counts, Obviously there are outliers that hit more shots or, outliers that hit less shots. But most of the time, a lot of a scout winning or losing comes down to like some of the fundamentals I talked about here. Like if you're getting ran down by a scout that's better than you a lot of the time, and this is something I've experienced a lot, right? Usually when I'm playing a scout that's better than me, I just won't fight him. You know what I mean? Scout is not okay. In 6v6, Scout is like an asterisk 1v1 class, right? He's like okay at it, but the risk of like taking a 1v1 and dying kind of, I mean, it depends, right? The reward can be really awesome, but the risk is also like super duper high, right? When you can do that, or you can avoid the 1v1 at all costs and, play around your team. Yeah, the choose your fights class. Yeah. You'll hold me to that next time you run me down. I don't even think you have that much worse DM than me, Max. Sorry for like the black screen on the stream. Pray you two tap him. Preach to the choir, Mobe. Two tap. Okay, I will say this: if you are a scout that can two-click everything, then most of what I say is like low-key irrelevant. But that's like the thing about Team Fortress and also just sixes as a game mode is like your level of DM kind of puts you on like a scale of like plays you can do and plays you kind of can't do. When you have the best DM in the game, like let's take you know, right now, Minaj is probably the most mechanically gifted scout, along with Kobe, right? Like those two scouts are like they just walk all over you and kind of do whatever they want, right? But um that leads to like what do I do against that? Usually you have to be more disciplined than usual about like buddying up with your soldier and or your combo, and everyone has to like do their job, right? And everyone doing their job is something that is way out of the scope of this whole like class session. So I won't really go into that, but I see somebody that has been typing for a while, so I'm assuming there's a question that's being written out. Sorry, I'm like tabbed out looking at Discord. I'm not sure if Egan is also showing the Discord, the guy that's streaming this, but but yeah, I'd say more or less though, like um that was like a lot of the basics that I wanted to throw out into the world and cover. Um this is just like a questions session now. What do you do to stop soldiers conceptually? Okay. Somebody. Okay. I will answer the what do you do to stop soldiers conceptually question before the other question. Um, so I'm assuming that's coming from a combo scout perspective, right? Um, stopping soldiers conceptually is again anticipating, right? When a soldier is alive, their potential to do something is constant, right? A soldier, I'll go ahead and just go switch to soldier. A soldier has the highest burst movement in the game, right? Um, Now Scout has the most consistent movement in the game, the consistent fastest movement in the game. Um, but Soldier has the highest burst movement in the game. Um, well, I mean, that's like kind of a lie. Technically, Demo does, but Soldier has more consistent movement than Demo does. Demo has like the least consistent but highest burst, but Demo doesn't usually jump like ever unless it's like during an Uber. But Soldier is the one jumping most of the time. When you're playing Scout, you're looking for soldiers constantly when you're on Pocket Scout. How do you stop soldiers? So on mid fights, there's a concept called pre-denying. Now, this gets like really complicated really fast, but when you're on Combo Scout, you can very intentionally look for early damage on the soldiers and either strip them of buffs or strip them of crit heals, or any damage is good, right? Even 40 damage, any amount of damage matters a lot, right? Because the difference between like 250 and like 220 is like, depending on the soldier, they'll either like delay themselves to like jump later or ask for a buff, which like forces his medic to like turn to like turn to buff him, which gives your soldiers a timing to potentially land on the medic for free. Like any amount of damage on either one of the soldiers like leads to a lot of branching scenarios like really quickly that are very complicated. But stopping a soldier conceptually is just being aware of both them being alive and being aware of hiding spots that they can do, and also high bomb spots that they can do. So I mentioned earlier, but on process, for instance, the most common high bomb is like here, right? If a soldier is alive and you're waddling up to choke on scout, you have to stop and be like, wait a minute, they have a soldier alive. He can like do the high bomb thing that Mobe said in that class, like however long ago. You know what I mean? I need to look out for that. And well, what do you know? Like you look up, oh, there he is, and you like dodge him. Oh, he like dies instantly, you know? Usually these bombs that soldiers do are very, very, very committal. If you are anticipating the bomb at all and like makes it so the soldier does not insta kill you, you just win, right? The soldier dies. That's a lot easier said than done, if I may admit, because a lot of it is game sense and a lot of time dying to these things that, like, to me, become like a little more obvious. Like, I don't know. Obviously, it's not like I never die to this anymore nowadays, right? But I'm at least aware of it. Um, it becomes like a knowledge check, right? How many hiding spots do you know? How many high bombs do you know? How many wall bugs do you know? This mechanic is crazy. You can like just hang out up here. Really, as any class. Oh my goodness gracious. But yeah, like hanging out up here like this, if you're a soldier or like a combo scout, you have to clear it, right? Very scary. If you are just, again, on Pocket Scout, the enemy soldiers are like your number one priority always. You have to think about them if they're alive or if they're capable, right? Your your hatred of soldiers only stops when either both of them are dead or both of them for sure are like decommissioned, right? And can't do anything. A lot of the time, again, you have to just anticipate the play. If, a soldier, let's say, you avoid choke because of this high bomb, but you go Al Qaeda and the soldier does this high bomb anyway and like goes to land on you. If he like fades, then his play's over, right? That's one soldier that can't do anything for at least like probably 10 seconds, right? So that buys you time to like either look for the other soldier or look for other threats. And if the soldier's dead, then he can't ever bomb you. So I don't know if I'm making sense with this. If you can type out if it makes sense or not. If you want me to elaborate on anything in particular, Crude, I can. But it's like, again, it's very easy for me to say like, oh, just anticipate it. Yeah. Yeah, sorta, yeah. Because it's like, what about positioning? You're positioning on high ground almost always. And don't overchase. Yeah, that's one thing. So high ground enables you to both find the soldiers and find their location. Soldier tracking is a skill, right? You need to be mindful of where the soldiers are positioned and what their possible bombs are. And knowing where the soldiers are positioned enables you to either feel out the timing on when they bomb or look for damage on them if possible, or, like, again, just like whenever possible, like high ground is your best friend. You don't necessarily have to be on high ground literally all the time 24/7, because the thing about high ground is you do become isolated. It is very easy to shoot you when you're on high ground, especially as a demo man, right? And it's harder for your medic to heal you when you're on high ground. You know what I mean? So high ground is usually won like later in the fight, right? There's a saying that can be applied where the team that takes high ground second usually wins, because if you have high ground first, and you don't know how to play the high ground, you can eat a lot of damage, and then the other team takes the high ground, and then you lose the fight off of that. But generally on Scout, you take high ground to spot where the soldiers are on Pocket Scout. I mean, spot where the soldiers are. Other miscellaneous players like the demo are also important information to gather, but again, like soldiers, soldier, 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 all the time. You need to think about them. Knowing where the soldiers are at all times will make your life a lot easier, right? Just make it a point to think about where the soldiers are and where they're positioned and what their potential bombs are. You know. And also positioning is like a very vague thing, right? On Pocket Scout, a lot of the time your positioning is like it's kind of passive, but not really. You're mostly positioned along high ground. And a lot of your positioning is also just dictated by where the soldiers are, right? Or where the threats are. If you have to go Al Qaeda, right? Then that's where you go. You know what I mean? You can look to path the height after that, but if you can't go through choke for whatever reason, there's a demo man on top of it, whatever, then you take the best option you can, right? So yeah. Does the like vague positioning guide make sense? It's like more or less just high ground, and you use high ground to spot the soldiers, right? Just pay attention to them. The vague positioning guide makes sense. Good. Okay, to this other question. As someone who casually plays Scout, is double jumping while aiming shooting really worth it? Question mark. I've heard some players say it's not beneficial depending on the enemy player's skill, because people will often predict where I land or might airshot if they're skilled enough. This is kind of it's a DM question. So jumping while shooting, I mentioned toward the start of the class, when I was talking about like Scout as a whole, the vague general EM idea and concept is you jump versus explosives. You can jump to high ground, right? You can jump to often explosives are looking to shoot your feet. So especially if you have the winger, you can like you can jump above the explosion radius and avoid damage like that. Sorry, I got pinged where. So that's pretty funny. In terms of like dodging air shots, that's a lot of that comes down to feel and what you are comfortable with doing as a player. Often the best answer is to like jump backwards as much as you can. If you're jumping toward your target a lot, it becomes literally impossible to dodge their rocket, right? Playing your mid-range will often yield to better results, right? You're playing your mid-range, like the soldiers shooting at you. I mean, process a little. And this is like a little hard to. I can go to last. Like playing your mid-range will let you like dodge rockets easier, right? If you're jumping at the soldier, if the soldier, yes, is skilled enough, has low enough ping, they'll headshot rocket you, whatever, they'll airshot you, they'll destroy you. Oh no, right? Which is why often, play your damage mid-range is usually my best advice when it comes to playing against soldiers. Demo is like a whole nother question. Usually, obviously, demo's mid-range is the best, right? Um, this is like relative. If you feel like you can comfortably mid-range the demo you're playing against, then you can. But you will often have to look for like alt angles that the demo isn't necessarily expecting, which I know is like super vague, to like deal damage to him, right? You also don't necessarily need to be on top of the demo all the time, right? In terms of hit scan, um, it's not necessarily don't jump ever. It's don't make your jump timing obvious, right? Um, there are scouts that have a playstyle that facilitates jumping. The most famous example of scouts that have good DM that jump a lot is Yum Yum. He jumps a lot, right? This guy is jumping constantly. But the way he's able to hit so many shots while jumping is one, he has like a gorillion hours on MGE, and two, he's using his movement to aim for him, right? Um, when he's jumping, he's not necessarily like tracking or like flicking all the time while he's jumping, right? Like, I mean, doing this is like straining my hand, right? He's off centering his crosshair, predicting the movement comfortably with the scout, and using his jump to both control the scout's movement and move his crosshair into the scout, right? Um, it's like very much like dumbing it down a lot, but that's more or less what great scouts that jump a lot do, right? That are able to most of the time get away with jumping versus a hit scan class, right? Other than that, it's generally ill-advised to jump against hit scan classes because the movement is predictable, quote unquote, right? The reason it becomes predictable is because if you're, and this affects me a lot because I like tracking a lot of the time. If you're tracking, then your movement is predictable. You'll get into like a rhythm with your jumping. Um, you know, you'll like you move in a very comfortable way for a hit scan player to shoot you, right? And even for an explosive, um, how you jump, like if your if your double jump is like a similar timing every time, then they'll just wait for you to double jump, and as you hit the floor, they'll shoot you with a rocket, right? Um, with that being said, like keep trying. Like don't feel discouraged to like do one thing or another thing. Like there are just like there's just concepts that exist in terms of like deathmatch and people becoming so optimized at shooting the other gamer at this point. You know what I mean? I mean, this game's been out for so long at this point that a lot of players can see like jump movement pretty easily. Um, and the players that have very unique jump movement, like I mentioned Yum Yum, are able to, abuse the fact that most players' jump movement is predictable, right? There's also just jumping to jump at a random timing. Comedically enough, I've there's like a joke theory that I have with some of my buddies where like you can just like stop and just jump in a straight line, and sometimes that'll catch the scout. And the joke is the no mix up, where it's like movement is always like contextual, right? Having good movement, quote unquote, is just how many times do you get hit relative to the other player, right? Or other players that exist. So there's no hard and fast like advice that will cure all like oh, I'm all of a sudden never getting air shot or never getting hit in the air while I'm jumping against a scout. Because at the end of the day, every player's objective is to shoot you, and your objective is to shoot them. So inevitably, you're going to get air shot at some point. Um, and that's why you shouldn't feel bad about getting your shots. How much water should I drink? 1,000,000 gallons per day. And if you don't, then you are dying of thirst. Look at that smooth aim. Thank you, Max. Are there any other questions? This class is running for almost 2 hours now, so I probably want to wrap it up here. You'll take notes on that. By the way, what's usually the mouse sensitivity to use on Scout? Is it similar to most Scout mains? I actually have no idea if my sensitivity is similar to most Scouts. I'll go into my settings here. I run 0.8 and my DPI is 1600. I don't know what that translates to in terms of like inch per 360 or whatever. I think it's around like, I can't say. I don't want to like tab out and do the math right now. Do you have that spreadsheet? I lost it. There's one. Oh, the one that Moose made. I could probably find it at some point. Oh. Oh, his is just mouse. Oh, I see. Is Force of Nature okay to use? In my opinion, I encourage anyone to run whatever they want at all times. There are players that exist. Like there's an Australian player named Cookie that's like known for running the Force of Nature. Was going to buy an Australian Force of Nature. Do it, bro. Do it, Michael. You got that. I'm ready to see the Force of Nature Michael Wheelbarrow arc. Okay, what was I saying before I was so rudely interrupted? Like, there's an Australian Scout player named Cookie. You can look up Cookie on YouTube, like Cookie TF2, and you'll find a Scout player running the Force of Nature in a 6v6 competitive setting. It's like, okay. Oh my. Wait, Max actually found. No way you found this, bro. You are a nerd. Where did you find this? Who made this? Think this is a different one? Okay. I want to filter by Scout, but I don't know if I can. Okay, but with that being said, like, I'm not, okay. Use whatever sensitivity is comfortable to you, right? That's the first thing I need to say. I've used my sensitivity for like ever, and I'm just used to it. But you can technically use literally whatever sense you want. I've known people who have run a 1 inch per 360 sensitivity and have done well on Scout. It was honestly a movie to watch. But like when it comes to anything, aim training is a friend, right? What aim training does is it targets like muscle groups in like your shoulder, arm, hand, your fingers, like everything, right? It's a gym for your hand. You know what I mean? So more resistance training. So like training certain scenarios that are better for higher sense or running a higher sense and training your like okay, this is what I meant to say. A higher sensitivity emphasizes your fingers and your wrists more, right? It's more hand based. A lower sense emphasizes your arm more, right? When you get to like the medium sense range, you kind of use both, right? Which in some cases is like it's the best of both worlds, right? So I think it was like what 8 inches per 360 is like the most medium of medium senses to ever medium. Or like I think I have like a 23 centimeter 360. Last time I checked. something like that, which is like on the middle end. Like looking at this list, um, I'm seeing like a 6-inch per 360 Wonder on debt. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Needless to say, like, just use whatever sense you want. Like, I don't think there's like a higher sense gives you better movement, and a lower sense gives you usually better like aim control at the cost of like being less aware generally, right? So you're better at like shooting what's in front of you, but you are less inclined to like look around more when you have a lower sense. You know what I mean? So you're just generally less aware of what's going on around you. I would say as a baseline, this is what I did when I picked my sense actually. I put my mouse on one end of my mouse pad and I went to the under end of my mouse pad until I did a full 360. And that is how I pick my sense. Now, nowadays, my sense is a little faster because I was on a journey for a bit to up my sense. Because when I had a lower sense, it was actually hurting my arm a lot, especially when I played for extended periods of time. But nowadays, I'm on like a faster sense a little bit. It feels good. I like it. Used to play at 0.7 800 DPI. One at 800. One at 800, I feel like is like a very standard like sensitivity. I feel like I see a lot of like CS pros on 1 by 800, right? Michael played on LAN in CS? Actually, I didn't know this. No way you both typed that. You're both bots. You're both bots. But yeah, I hope that like kind of answers your question, NG Panda. Play like 7.9 cents on. Do you know your DPI per chance? I would guess like 800, but it's also possible it's 400 DPI, which would actually be like a somewhat normal sense. But yeah, like if you're not sure how to like check for your DPI, I would personally just assume it's either 400 or 800. 800, that's like 7.9 is like really high, right? Am I silly? Like I'm pretty sure 7.9. Wait, let me put that in right now. For me, that's like, yeah, that's like a million miles per hour. I'm also on 1600 DPI, so I could, um, my software allows me to like change my DPI, so I'm actually gonna put mine on 400 right now. Mine's around 20. What? Wait, okay. Oh, wait, I gotta try this. Oh my God. Okay. Is your mouse pad really small? NG Panda? I gotta ask if you have a mouse pad. I use an IKEA desk pad for kids. I mean, like literally anything is something, right? You don't need like a super ultra like the best glass pad out there to be like a good player, right? So anything works. Again, I would just recommend like you can put your mouse like even just find like a comfortable space on like the far left side of your your setup and just like do a 360. Like I do a 360 and I move my mouse like an inch. This is a 1-inch wonder sense. Holy. But like maybe lowering your sense could help you, probably, but if I'm being honest, one day I might run this sense for fun. Just cuz. Um Holy, oh my, this sense feels super slow now. But yeah, I mean that's probably like something you can try. NG Panda is like lowering your sense and see how that feels. 45. There's no way Exilor runs that sense. Okay, I'm starting to ramble, and this is starting to become like like a podcast about sense. Why do you think his lock's so good? Maybe Exilor's the reason the lock was banned. All right, I think that's a good place to settle. I appreciate everyone tuning in. I'm not sure who all has been here the whole time, besides like Egan, but anyone who's been here the whole time, shout out. Thank you for letting me have this class. I hope I gave out some good information. I hope I was able to help some noobs with the game today. So, of course, Egan.